Right, so massive news has broken this afternoon as the group of 5 independent MPs elected across England, Jeremy Corbyn, Shockat Adam, Ayoub Khan, Adnan, Hussain and Iqbal Mohamed, have formalised their loose grouping into the equivalent of a political party in all but name. A formal parliamentary alliance equal in size and standing, given their numbers, to Reform UK Ltd and the DUP, and giving them, and more importantly their constituents, a louder, united voice, and be better able to hold Starmer's Labour to account. And before people go, well, there's only 5 of them, what difference can they possibly make? Well, the mainstream media is already wetting itself over it, so plenty, it would seem. Right, so for anyone who was holding out for a Jeremy Corbyn party in the none too distant future, this might just be as close as you're going to get to it right now. Not quite a party, but a technical group within Parliament that is going by Independent Alliance. Very much nails on what it says on the tin. And to all intents and purposes, they'll carry on moving forwards as the same grouping on various issues that they have done since they were all elected separately as independent MPs. And equally, wherever their political interests may diverge, they can still absolutely do so. Essentially, you can think of it as a political party when it wants to act as one group, and not a party when certain issues may well divide them and they want to act independently. They've certainly none have presented themselves so far that I've noticed to be anything other than completely aligned with each other. Where they have been considered separate independent MPs so far, though, it has meant that they've been locked out of certain positions within Parliament, such as various committees and being able to sit on them, access to certain funding pots as political parties are open to be able to access, and the prominence that being part of a formalised grouping actually brings. It's been a matter of debate for a while that this was coming. It sort of went quiet. I suppose the summer recess is largely responsible for it falling from the forefront of our minds somewhat, along with other world events. But today is the first day back in Parliament, and on his desk, first day back, Speaker of the House of Commons, Lindsay Hoyle, received this notification of the formation of this new parliamentary group this afternoon, that they will be going by the name Independent Alliance, and that their parliamentary business manager will be in touch shortly to discuss next steps. Naturally, a statement has also been issued on behalf of the group. MPs form Independent Alliance to provide progressive opposition to Starmer's government. 5 independent MPs elected in July's general election, which include former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, have formed the Independent Alliance parliamentary group, making them the joint 5th biggest grouping in the Commons. With 5 members, the Independent Alliance will have the same parliamentary strength as Reform UK and the DUP. The aim of the formal arrangement is to give the MPs greater opportunities to ask questions and hold the government to account on behalf of their constituents. As a parliamentary grouping of 5, they are more likely to be allocated question and speaking slots by the Speaker on a regular basis, including being added to the rota reserved for smaller parties to ask questions at PMQs. The 5 MPs jointly issued a statement saying, "We were elected by our constituents to provide hope in a parliament of despair. Already this government has scrapped winter fuel allowance for pensioners, voted to keep the 2-child benefit cap, and ignored calls to end arms sales to Israel. Millions of people are crying out for a real alternative to austerity, inequality and war, and their voices deserve to be heard. We will continue to speak out against the 2-child benefit cap, oppose the genocide in Gaza, and defend the rights of refugees. The more MPs who are prepared to stand up for these principles, the better. Our door is always open to other MPs who believe in a more peaceful and equal world." That last line, I think, meant for those 7 MPs Starmer suspended for daring to vote to scrap the 2-child benefit cap, of course, but sadly still seem too wedded to being Labour, despite that name having less and less meaning. Working families with children continue to be told their 3rd child or more is worth less than the others. And if you retire, you can freeze this winter, because otherwise apparently that is all that stands between the economy crashing or struggling on. Or at least it is, according to the Labour Party's Lucy Powell in a blatantly dishonest car crash of an interview from the other day. Benefit these 7 joined Corbyn and co, to my mind, and swelled the ranks of this informal grouping. Their voices are silenced upon pain of suspension clearly already, obviously under Starmer's Labour, and the same goes for the rest of the remaining rump of left Labour MPs doing more to legitimise Starmer's authoritarianism with their very presence by being little more than a token left. As for people now sneering at this, though, and there will be plenty of them, asking what difference this group can possibly make, thinking, oh God, here goes Corbyn again. Well, if they get platformed half as much as the equally represented size-wise Reform UK Ltd and their mouthpieces of Nigel Farage and Richard Tice, they'll be making a bigger difference than they are right now already, broadly ignored by the media as of course they are, being left-wing. But let's also not forget that these guys have been campaigning hard, in concert with each other, on mainly foreign policy up until now, it has to be said, demanding more is being done on the matter of a ceasefire in Israel and Gaza, as mentioned in that statement, demanding better treatment of migrants as well. And given that as I was writing this, Foreign Secretary David Lammy decided to announce the suspension of 35 arms sales contracts, you might say such is the effect this small group of independent MPs in part is already having, that they can have, even though there's only 5 of them. But equally, you have to also realise that much more work is clearly going to be needed, because functionally this move by Labour, by Lammy, has just been for optics, since 90% of arms sales to Israel are actually going to continue. Nice try, Lammy. You've been seen already. I'll have much more to say on that story yet, I'm sure, but not just here. However, for as much as independent MPs might be getting dissed and dismissed, it's a show of ignorance, frankly, that you do that with and just ignore what these people can actually do, what they could be capable of. When was the last time we had a general election, for example, in this country that led to 5 new independent MPs being elected? 3 of them, in fact, deposing incumbent Labour MPs in an election that party ended up winning by a landslide and forming a large government. The number of seats Starmer has is a show of how undemocratic our electoral system is. Clearly, not how much support he has, because he lost seats. He lost MPs he already had. Sure, he gained plenty of new ones, but that isn't what is supposed to happen, is it? Starmer lost 3 MPs to 3 independents, all in areas of gross deprivation. And here he is keeping kids in poverty and telling pensioners they have to freeze or else the economy is going to collapse, as if it is their greed somehow to be supported that is damaging the economy, rather than Labour's refusal to spend when borrowing at such a stupidly low interest rate right now. And that's even getting onto the prospect of a wealth tax without even bringing that up. £160 million Starmer is saving off the cut to that winter fuel allowance, incidentally. The difference apparently between the economy surviving or crashing. Not that it really can crash functionally. We print our own money, we control our own currency, and that is always going to be a lie. But when they can make spending commitments like the public sector pay rise of around £10 billion as that's going to cost, or even the £3 billion annually for however long it takes, handed over to Ukraine. Now, I am in no way suggesting they are not worthy causes. Of course they are. But if those sums can be found and the economy won't crash, what is it about freezing pensioners for such a tiny amount of money in comparison to those sums that is all of a sudden this massive spending issue? Surely I'm not the only one who cannot fathom the logic of that. So it is little wonder that starving kids and freezing the elderly is at the forefront of this new independent alliance. And you can be sure the questions they will now get more often than not get now will be used to slam Labour's ridiculous Tory-style excuses from the political choices they make, which are to hammer the young and old instead of the filthy rich for a minute fragment of their overall exorbitant wealth. I put that to those 7 Labour MPs who are resolutely remaining as independent MPs right now. Your Zara Sultanas and your John McDonnells. These MPs who are on exactly the same page as this new alliance and absolutely not on the side of Starmer's Labour. What is more important to you lot here? Standing up for what is right, standing up for those being impoverished by your own party, or rejoining it so you can, say you're part of the party in power but be completely ignored still, as you ever were before, by the Labour right who run things these days? No strongly worded letters or hand-wringing is going to change that. What is the point of being part of that? Why not be part of something better? From small acorns, great oak trees grow, or something like that, as the saying goes. Stop expecting Starmer to listen to you and just be part of something meaningful again. I cannot wait to see how much trauma these guys as a formal alliance can cause Starmer, and I cannot wait to see how these few MPs can absolutely make a difference, because if you still doubt it, prepare to be proven wrong. Meanwhile, whilst these 5 MPs, 4 of them Muslim incidentally, line up their desks with each other, Muslims medics may have just been put in a feral spot of bother thanks to the enormous ego and right-wing hate-rag peddling of one of Labour's front benchers, claiming she got fast-tracked for NHS treatment because of how she voted over Gaza, voting for a ceasefire, who she was because she's clearly epically famous, and because her doctor was apparently a Palestinian. Manna from heaven for the far right, and more chance of two-tier Keir have followed. Get the details of that story in this video recommendation here, and your suggested next watch. I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.